Welcome to the training on the Community Eligibility Provision. Since there is likely a mix of those that are very familiar with CEP and how to qualify, and those that are very new to the concept, we will give a brief overview on CEP and what it means to qualify, and then we will spend some time on the specifics of operating under CEP. The Community Eligibility Provision is a meal service option that allows schools and local education agencies in high poverty areas to offer meals at no cost to all enrolled students without collecting household applications for a period of 4 years. For the remainder of this presentation, the Community Eligibility Provision will be referred to as CEP, and local education agencies will be referred to as LEAs. Schools or LEAs must qualify to operate the CEP. In September of 2023, USDA's Food and Nutrition Services, FNS, lowered the participation threshold from 40% identified student percentage to a 25% identified student percentage. Now let's explore what is meant by an identified student percentage. An identified student percentage, or ISP for short, are the number of students identified in your enrollment that are directly certified for meal benefits. In other words, any enrolled students with meal access that is approved for meals at no cost without having to complete a household income application. This means all students that are part of a household receiving SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR, or are listed on the Medicaid list as free, as well as students who are identified as homeless through the McKinney-Vento Act, migrant students, foster students, and Head Start students. Once your school or school district indicates that you are interested in exploring CEP, you will be asked to submit your enrollment data. You will also identify directly certified students and send in any applicable lists such as direct certification, Head Start, migrant and homeless students signed by the application liaison. The state agency will then determine the percentage. If you make it to at least 25% ISP, then CEP is an option for your school or district. The base ISP is then multiplied by 1.6 to get the free claiming percentage. The 1.6 multiplier is to account for the students that would likely qualify for meals at no cost through a household application, since collecting applications and processing them is not an option when operating under CEP. This is a formula set forth by USDA. It is important to note for other programs and grants that your site ISP claiming percentage is the percentage of free and paid students that qualify. If you are CEP, you feed 100% of your students at no cost. However, not 100% of your students qualify. So when applying for grants and other funding, it is important to note that your ISP is the percentage that you would use. When the Student Success Act passed in 2019, part of the act was to provide supplemental state funds for public school meals through the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. When a school or LEA is operating under CEP and their free claiming percentage is below 90%, they are eligible to receive state funds. This is known as the Community Eligibility Provision Incentive, or CEPI. The supplemental state fund payment is equal to the federal free rate minus the federal paid rate. To calculate the school or LEA federal free claiming percentage, you will take your ISP percentage for the school, group, or district multiplied by 1.6. This will give you the free claiming percentage. You can find your claiming ISP and the free claiming percentage in your final approval letter. Basically, how this works is the total number of reimbursable meals counted at the point of service is entered into CNPweb by site. The system applies the federal free claiming percentage to the total meals. If the claiming ISP is below 90%, then CNPweb will calculate the difference between the federal free claiming percentage and 90%. The system will pay that percentage difference times your total meals at the state payment rate. So if your claiming percentage is already at 90% or above, your school or district would not qualify for any additional state funding under the CEPI. As an example, if your claiming ISP is at 25% and the 1.6 multiplier is added, that would give you a 40% free claiming percentage. That would mean that if you serve 100 meals, you would be reimbursed at the federal free rate for 40 meals and the federal paid rate for the other 60 meals. If the school or LEA is participating and eligible for CEPI, then state funds would kick in to pay the difference between the 90% minus the federal free 40 claiming percentage, which means you would receive the supplemental state funds for 50% of your total meals. For claims, the system is going to calculate the total number of meals, and it will do the breakdown of the state and federal funds. You just need to enter the total number of reimbursable meals counted at the point of service. Now, let's look at a site in CNPweb. The system has already calculated the ISP times the 1.6 multiplier. You will see this site has a federal free claiming percentage of 65.74. The site served 4,217 lunches in this month. The system takes the federal free claiming percentage, 65.74, times the number of lunches, which gives us 2,772 meals reimbursed at the federal free rate. The remaining lunches are reimbursed at the federal paid rate, which is 1,445 meals. Since this site is below 90% federal free claiming percentage, the site will receive supplemental state funds for the difference between 90% and the federal free rate of 65.74, which equals 24.26 of the meals paid at the state rate. So you can see the total meals times 24.26 equals 1,023 meals reimbursed at the state rate. Remember, the state rate is the federal rate minus the federal paid rate. So in the end, you are being reimbursed for 90% of your meals at the federal rate if it is just paid through a combination of federal paid rate plus the supplemental state rate. So if you have qualified for CEP at this point, now it's time to make the decision. When making this decision, there are definitely some things to consider. Finances. If there happens to be any shortfall between the reimbursement and the cost of operating the program, the school must make up the difference using non-federal funds. These are often referred to as general funds. So does our school have the funds to cover any potential cost? Does our district serve both breakfast and lunch? Under CEP, you must serve both meals in order to participate. Do we have the staffing to support the potential increase in participation? And do we have the equipment and physical space to support potential increase in participation? So now that you have elected CEP and you have a signed agreement, you may begin feeding all your enrolled students at no charge. As a reminder, CEP is different from summer feeding where you can also feed siblings and other community children. CEP only applies to students enrolled at a participating site. While CEP is much easier meal service option because it significantly reduces some of the administrative burden, there are still things that you must know to do and not do while operating CEP. Let's look at some of those things. Meal counting and claiming becomes much easier under CEP as you no longer have to take meal counts by free, paid, and reduced statuses. You simply have to ensure that one reimbursable meal is going to an eligible student. This can be done in multiple ways at the point of service. You could use a clicker and then record the total on a count sheet, in a spreadsheet, or in a meal counting software. You could also just make tick marks on a count sheet to mark the meals, or by directly using a meal counting software where students enter a PIN or scan a card. If you have a meal counting software, it is recommended that you continue using that under CEP because it will identify duplicate meals and creates less paperwork for you to retain. If you are using a manual method, you must have a process to ensure students do not receive duplicate meals that are counted and claimed for reimbursement. When entering your claim by site, you will now enter the total breakfast and lunches served as bulk numbers, and CNPweb will apply the claiming percentages and split the meals into the appropriate free and paid categories. As a reminder, if you are receiving additional CEPI funds, you do not need to make adjustments to your numbers. The differences up to the 90% free claiming rate will happen automatically. You will only enter the total meals served. When operating CEP, you are still required to send beginning of the year notifications that your school or district is participating in CNP and that all students will receive breakfast and lunch at no charge. The CEP manual allows for this to be done in many ways, but multiple methods are best practice. You may email letters, send home flyers, or use the postal system. You should also update your website and discuss this information at board meetings and other parent and community gatherings. You will not be able to distribute and process applications. In addition to the basic notification that all households must receive, participating LEAs must pull the direct certification list at least once at the beginning of the school year when operating CEP. You may pull it as many times as you would like, but you are required to do it once each school year. When you pull that list, students that are directly certified must be sent the direct certification letter informing the household that their students qualify for free meals. We know this may be confusing as all students are receiving meals at no charge. However, the regulation still requires that directly certified students receive a specific notification. Lastly, the state agency receives a lot of questions from CEP schools about not being able to collect and process applications when that information is historically used for districts to qualify for other funding. In place of applications, schools may collect income information by using the Family Income Survey located on our website. As a reminder, since this information is not being used for school nutrition purposes, it is not an allowable cost from the nonprofit food service account. You should partner with the school administration to determine if this is something that your school or district will be using. On the last slide, we talked about do's and don'ts of CEP, but you may be in a district that is not district-wide CEP. This means some of your schools are CEP and some are standard counting and claiming. If this is the case for you, the do's and don'ts may be a little different. While they still apply to the schools in your district that are CEP, they do not apply for the schools that are standard counting and claiming. For those schools, you will still need to make applications available and process them. In addition, the district certification list for those schools must be pulled at least 3 times per year as per the regulatory requirement. We get several questions about applications from families that have some students attending a CEP and some of that attend a standard counting and claiming school. If you receive an application for meal benefits and one of the students listed on the application attends a non-CEP school, you will process the application and make the determination for the student attending the non-CEP school. You will only list the non-CEP student on the approval or denial letter. Should you receive an application that contains students that attend a CEP school only, you would not process that application. Simply notify the family that applications are not required or processed for that site. Let's talk about the After-School Snack Program, or ASSP for short. Offering the After-School Snack Program is not required with CEP. It is optional. So any school can operate the ASSP. However, for snacks to be at no charge for all students, a site must establish area eligibility to qualify. So how does this work with CEP since you cannot process applications? While there are a few different ways that a site can establish area eligibility, CEP schools can qualify by their site ISP. The individual site ISP is what drives the number for CEP schools. If it is above 31.25%, then all snacks will be reimbursed at the free rate. This is because an ISP of 31.25 times the 1.6 multiplier puts the site at 50% free, which is a threshold for site and area eligibility. If your site ISP is below the 31.25% and your site does not qualify in any other way, you will enter the total snack counts into your claim and your CEP claiming percentage or free and paid will be applied. Keep in mind that the Student Success Act additional funding of up to 90% reimbursement only applies to breakfast and lunch. It does not subsidize snack. Milk is part of the reimbursable meal. Oftentimes, CEP school gets students that bring their meals from home or maybe just want a second meal with their meal. Schools may allow the students to take an additional milk or a milk outside of the school meal, but the school would either need to charge the student or track the milks and reimburse the nonprofit food service account for the cost of those milks. If an extra milk is taken or a second milk, this is an a la carte item and would not be an allowable expense from the school meals fund. That would either need to be paid by the student or by the district from non-federal funds. This can sometimes be confusing for students and families when meals are served at no cost, but clear and continuous communication can help make this more clear for students and families. Verification is an annual process where a sample pool of applications are selected by an LEA and the information is verified. When your school or district is district-wide CEP, meaning all sites are non-pricing, you would no longer conduct verifications as you are no longer distributing or processing applications. However, you must still complete the annual verification reports, also referred to as FNS 742 Verification Collection Report. Now, if any of the schools in your district are standard counting and claiming, you must still perform verification as part of the regulatory requirement. If an application is selected that a household with students from both a CEP school and non-CEP school, you must still verify that application. However, the notification along with any correspondence should only refer to the non-CEP school students. Let's take a look at a few frequently asked questions. Can we elect CEP during the school year? The answer is no. USDA did a one-time mid-year election when the ISP threshold decreased, but generally you must elect prior to the start of the school year using April 1st data from the school year prior to implementation. Who should process the Family Income Survey? That depends. What is it being used for? Since income is no longer needed for program use, this would not be an allowable use for the nonprofit food service account, so postage and processing cannot be paid for with school nutrition funds. What if a family turns in an application for a student attending a CEP school? You would not process the application and let the family know that the applications are not processed for that site because you are participating under a service option where all students eat at no charge. I received a message that a new direct certification download is available. What do I do? CEP schools must conduct a match between SNAP records and student enrollment records at least once annually. This means the SNAP Direct Certification file must be downloaded at least once every school year and retained on file. You may do this more often or not, but it must be done at least once. I have a family that would like a letter stating they've received meals at no cost, but they are not directly certified, and we do not process applications. What can I give them? You can give them a letter that says that their students attend a school where all children receive meals at no charge under the NSLP CEP. Visiting students. If you have a student visiting CEP schools from a non-CEP school, those students' meals would be counted and become part of your claim. You may have to adjust your highest days enrollment if it is a large number of students. Now, if you have students from a CEP school visiting a non-CEP school, you would be encouraged to feed those students at the non-CEP site at no cost. Then, when making the claim, you would apply the CEP site's claiming percentage. As an example, if 10 students are visiting a non-CEP high school from a CEP middle school, and the middle school's claiming percentage is 60% free, then you would claim that at the high school where the meals were served. And if all 10 students took a reimbursable meal, then 6 would be claimed as free and 4 would be claimed as paid. Unpaid meal charges from years prior to CEP, now what? If the debt is considered collectible, reasonable efforts can still be made to collect the unpaid meal charges. If the LEA determines the debt is no longer collectible and ceases efforts to obtain payment, then the unpaid balance would be considered bad debt. The revenue lost from bad debt must be restored to the nonprofit food service account with non-federal funding sources. Listed on this slide are some resources to help guide you through CEP implementation. If you have any additional questions regarding the Community Eligibility Provision, please reach out to your assigned child nutrition specialist. This institution is an equal opportunity provider.